We have one more minute. I just want to take the time to welcome everybody who's here. Valerie, Vic, I see you guys. Natalie Baker, Joan, Frida, Becky again, Bernard, and I'm sure others will be joining us too, since you guys are early birds. So you get to meet Norah up close and personal. She tells us her story of where she's growing. And I'm going to pull up my introduction so that I can introduce you properly. So, welcome everyone. My name is Nikki. I'm the co-founder of Permaculture Gardens together with my husband Dave, who will be say hi, Dave.
Hi. Sorry, I was muted.
So he'll be he and I will be in the chat answering any questions that pop into your head. So if you do have questions, pop them into the chat because then we will collect them all for the end so that Nora can answer them during the Q&A after her presentation. And we started Permaculture Gardens because we really loved learning more and more about how productive we were. Our children's allergies got us into gardening, and through that, eating healthy and really getting inspired by the garden and what we were seeing, we decided we wanted to teach this to more people because more people kept on asking us about how do you grow it so successfully and so on and so forth. But one of the things that helped me really, that's fodder for my meditation, for my prayer, for a lot of things in the garden is saving seeds. And I feel like it's such an infinite thing when you talk about seeds, seed saving, where the seed comes from, and and as we will find out more and more from Norah tonight, in particular for collards. So Norah Hummel, our guest, has worked for Seed Savers Exchange since 2016 and has had so much experience overseeing the stewardship of many seeds as its seed bank manager. She is a graduate of environmental science at the University of Washington, and she and I both share a love for growing collard greens, and we want to bring that love to you all tonight. So please welcome Norah Hummel, and you take it away, Norah.
Thank you so much, Nikki, for that sweet introduction. I'm so excited to be with you all here tonight. Thank you so much for having me and giving me a chance to speak about the Heirloom Collard Project and the work that I do at Seed Savers Exchange. So I'm joining you from the northeast corner of Iowa. Many people may not be familiar with a tiny town called Decorah, but it's in the northeast corner. We're at zone 4B. So that's where I'm calling in from tonight. So I'm gonna just jump into this presentation about the Heirloom Collard Project. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. So bear with me while I share my screen. It's like a year and a half of pandemic, and I feel like every Zoom call, I'm like, is this gonna work? Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is possible. All right, does that look good, Nikki, on your end?
It's looking good.
Okay, great. Okay. Great. So just a little overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about Seed Savers Exchange and my role here as the seed bank manager. Then I'm going to give you an introduction to this awesome project that I help coordinate called the Heirloom Collard Project. We're going to take a minute to have a discussion about why would you save seed? Why is that important? Just a chance for us to do some brainstorming and hear a little bit about what maybe some of your motivations are for saving seed. I'm going to give you some basic information about saving collard seed. And then I'm going to give you a couple ways you can get involved in the Heirloom Collard Project. So I hope that sounds like what you signed up for. All right, so Seed Savers Exchange, if you're not familiar with the organization, again, we're located in Decorah, Iowa, here in Northeast Iowa. So Seed Savers Exchange started in 1975 by Kent Whaley and Diane Ott Whaley. And they really started this grassroots organization that was concerned with preserving heirloom seeds, seeds that had stories, seeds that had been passed down through families, through generations. And they started this gardener to gardener seed swap called the True Seed Exchange. And at first it was just about 20 people around the United States and in Canada. But over the years, this network just kept growing because more and more people wanted to share varieties that were important to their family and that they had been stewarding in their gardens and farms around the country. And Kent and Diane didn't really intend to start a seed collection. They wanted to start a network of people around the country and internationally that were concerned with preserving and stewarding heirloom seeds. But over the years, people started to donate varieties, special varieties that they had been growing themselves to Kent and Diane because in some cases they weren't sure that they could preserve these special varieties anymore. They were getting older, they didn't have any space to garden. And so out of this grew this large seed collection. And you may be familiar with Seed Savers Exchange through our retail catalog that now we operate today. We have a seed catalog, just like a lot of other organic seed companies in the country. We also have a seed rack program where you can buy seeds at your local garden store. But today we still facilitate that gardener to gardener seed swap, which is now called just the exchange. So today, my role at Seed Savers Exchange is to help manage our collection of historic and heirloom varieties. So today we have over 20,000 varieties in our collection. And the real goal of having this collection is to share it and to celebrate not only the seed, the physical seed, but also the stories and the histories associated with these varieties. So my job is a lot of behind the scenes work to make that seed accessible to the general public. So that's just a little bit about Seed Savers Exchange and the work I do. So tonight we're going to talk about collards, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. And this is a picture of Michael Twitty. And if you're not familiar with Michael Twitty, you should really check him out. He's an incredible culinary historian. He's a James Beard Award-winning author of a wonderful book called The Cooking Gene that talks about his own personal history and story through the lens of food. And it's just really fascinating. And he's talked a lot about kind of the origins and history of collards in this country. And he's really the expert on this topic. And I'm just paraphrasing his words. But he talks about collards as originating actually in Eurasia, kind of that netherworld between Europe and Asia. And they were long ago adopted in Africa, but they were actually introduced by Portuguese colonizers, first in Africa and then in the American South. So Michael Twitty talks a lot about the complicated nature of the transatlantic slave trade and how it contributed to the mixing of cultures, including food, like collards, and the seeds between the Americas, Africa, and Europe. And he notes that the first reference to collards in Southern culture and the first appearance of the crop in African American gardens was in Hanover, was in Hanover County, Virginia in the 1770s. So as you can imagine, over hundreds of years, like deep culinary traditions have developed and evolved with this crop. And the culinary influence of enslaved Africans in southern plantations and communities took root early on and went on to profoundly shape the cuisine of the southern United States. And I have this quote from author Dr. Jessica B. Harris that I wanted to share with you. And she says that food traditions hold symbols and meaning that serve as a culinary roadmap to our past. And I think that collards are one of these symbols of food traditions in the South, and especially with African American communities. So the growing of dark leaf and cooking of dark leafy greens became a regional specialty in the South, not just collards, but also mustard and turnip greens. And these greens have long served as an important nutritional role for Southerners, as a patch of collards could provide essential minerals and vitamins over a long harvest season. And over the years in the South, growers have saved seed and developed a wide diversity of locally selected varieties in the South. So that kind of sets the stage for what later became the Heirloom Collard Project. So how did this Collard Project begin? Well, it really began with a woman named Ira Wallace and a book by Ed Davis and John Morgan. And if you're not familiar with Ira Wallace, she's a dear friend and kind of the Collard, in my mind, the Collard matriarch. She's done so much work with heirloom seed preservation and written a lot of wonderful literature about growing food in the South. And she's the worker owner of Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, which specializes in heirloom Southern varieties. So definitely check out her work. So in 2015, researcher and author Ed Davis reached out to Ira to share some work that him and some other researchers have been working on in the early 2000s with the publication of this book. So Ed Davis and John Morgan, who are researchers at Emory and Henry University in Virginia, embarked on this collecting trip, this collard collecting trip, where they said it was just essentially a road trip. They rode their cars all around the Southeast looking for collard seed stewards and unique collard varieties. And their mission was to document as much collard diversity as possible. And so they did some research to try and identify different collard seed stewards, but really they just drove around for a number of years looking for patches of collards in people's gardens and farms. And whenever they found one of these patches of collards, they'd get out of their car, knock on the farmhouse door, and ask if they could talk to someone about the collards that they saw growing. And they met and documented about 100 different collards from 90 different seed stewards, about 90 different seed stewards in primarily North and South Carolina, but kind of all across the southeastern United States. And one thing that they noticed that a lot of these seed stewards had in common was that they were often in their late 70s and 80s. They were older, and they didn't necessarily have a plan of who was going to steward these varieties next. So they saw this collection trip as a real act of preservation, of preserving these varieties for the future. And at that point in time, they were more concerned about genetic diversity than maybe the seed story and the history of the variety. So Ed Davis shared this collection with Ira, and she got really excited. And in 2015, they grew out this whole collection at the South Carolina USDA research station. And Ira got to go down there and look at this whole diversity of collards. And she was just blown away and so excited that there was this incredible diversity. So she contacted us at Seed Savers Exchange and asked if we could reach out to the USDA and request some of these varieties, because she really wanted to celebrate them and work with them. So in 2016, Seed Savers Exchange received about 60 collard varieties from the USDA that fit our acquisition policy here at Seed Savers. And this was kind of the basis for the Heirloom Collard Project. And we just had a ton of ideas of where this project could go. We wanted to start a mentoring program of new and old seed savers. We wanted to regenerate all these varieties. We wanted to share their stories, collect oral history. We just had a ton of ideas of where we wanted this project to go. But the first step was to start regenerating these varieties, so growing them to produce seed so that we would have enough seed to share with other people in the community. So I'm sorry this picture is a little grainy, but this is a picture of two folks who regenerated the first variety from the USDA collection. So this is a picture of Lorraine Mortiz and Elmer Kesey, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, that worked with Ira to regenerate the William Alexander Heading Collard. So Ira was giving a talk in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, to the African-American community who was interested in connecting with past foodways. And Lorraine, pictured here, was actually part of a group, part of a sorority from a local college that really wanted to learn how to garden and participate in this project, but they had never gardened before. So under the watchful eye of Elmer here, who is a master gardener, they successfully overwintered their collards and saved seed. So they grew the William Alexander Heading Collard that I mentioned, which was originally stewarded by William Alexander of Columbia, North Carolina, who is an African-American seed steward who had grown these seeds for nearly 40 years. And he probably got this variety from his father. So here they are sending seed back to Seed Savers Exchange, where we put it in our freezer for distribution in the future. And we also sent a packet up to the Global Seed Vault in Svalbard, Norway. So after a couple years of doing some regeneration and bulking up some varieties of this collection, the project took a brief hiatus. And I think this is just due to the collaborative nature of this project. Sometimes it's hard to kind of continue that momentum with a lot of different people involved. But in 2020, collards were kind of back on all of our organizer brains. This is a picture of me in the midst of the pandemic sending out collard seeds to folks that were interested in participating in our collard trial. But at the beginning of 2020, myself, Phil Kauf here at Seed Savers Exchange, Ira Wallace, and Chris Smith, if you're familiar with him at the Utopian Seed Project, is also involved in this project. And Melissa Disa in Gainesville, Florida, is also involved as well. And we kind of injected some life back into this project and came up with a new mission statement for it, which reads, I'll just read it to you, this project aims to build a coalition of seed stewards, gardeners, farmers, chefs, and seed companies working to preserve heirloom collard varieties and their culinary heritage. So we were brainstorming ways that we could re-engage with this project and get people interested in growing and preserving these collard varieties. And we came up with this collaborative collard trial. So we have some friends over in Viroqua, Wisconsin, that run a really awesome trialing platform called SeedLinked, if you're familiar with them. And we reached out to them to see if it would be possible to launch this national collard trial. And I remember Nico over at SeedLink telling me like, oh yeah, we could do this, but we'd need like 200 people. And I was like, 200 people, like maybe 50 people are going to want to do this. Like, I don't know about that. But I think in the height of the pandemic, people were just hungry to connect with something, to connect with a bigger project. And we started to promote this collard trial. And I just started getting all these emails of people that wanted to participate. And in the end, we had about 250 people all over the country. This is a map of the participants here that wanted to grow some heirloom varieties. So here's a picture of us sending out the seeds to the participants. And we asked them to use the SeedLinked platform to collect some data about how these varieties grew in their system. So we had about 9 traits, things like yield, uniformity, flavor, of course, that we asked people to collect information on to kind of paint a picture of how this variety grew in their garden or farm or growing system. So I have some results that I can share with you, but we published a blog post that kind of interprets some of the results, and there's a link to the data for you can manipulate it yourself. And I'm just gonna quickly show you what that data looks like and how to kind of play around with it, because there's endless conclusions that you could draw from this data, and it's kind of fun to just see it live in action. Do you see it, Nikki? You're muted.
Yeah, she does.
You do? I hope you all do.
Yes, I see it.
Okay, beautiful. So we selected 18 heirloom varieties to trial, and we had 2 control varieties that were common in the seed trade that we also had folks trial. So we kind of had 2 different systems in this trial. We had 8 participants that grew all 20 varieties and collected data on them. But most people just grew 3 varieties. So that's called the triadic model, and collect data on just those 3 varieties. So let's see if I can move this. This is just all the data, all the results, which doesn't mean a whole lot, because you can see there's not a lot of difference in these scores. Everything's kind of smushed together, but we can kind of tease out some interesting things. So if we just looked at the triadic, so just people that received 3 varieties, we can actually look at a certain hardiness zone. So Nikki, where are you guys? You're in 9.
We're in 7B, but
you're in 7B, but folks are from all over.
All over. Yeah.
Let's just look at people who grew in my location. So in zone 4. So this is just looking at people that grew in zone 4A and 4B. And we can look, maybe we're just interested in flavor and disease resistance. So if we narrow down the results, we can see that yellow cabbage collard and Jernigan yellow cabbage collard looked like they were the most, scored the highest for disease resistance and flavor in that location. So being someone in the upper Midwest that's interested in those traits, maybe these would be some varieties that I would want to grow in my system. So in this way, you can kind of play around with these different results and find a variety that may be of interest to you to grow in your system. So all these varieties are available from the seed bank or the 2 control varieties that you can try to grow yourself. So that's just a fun little glimpse into the trial that we did. But that's my email. Back to the presentation. So in doing this trial, we got a lot of attention from folks all over the country. So this is a picture of Lane Selman. She's the director of the Culinary Breeding Network out in Portland, Oregon, and just does really wonderful work working with chefs and breeders and working with her local food system. So every year she hosts a winter vegetable sagra, which is basically a celebration of winter vegetables. And usually it's in person, and it's in a big room, and there's all these tastings and presentations. But because it was 2020 and COVID-19 was upon us, everything was virtual last year. So she invited us to host, be part of this celebration and be part of a Collard Week. And we were really excited to promote the project further and to kind of further celebrate collards. So here is our poster that we created for the Collard Week. And we reached out to some experts, folks that know a lot about collards. And here's a picture of Michael Twitty. We got him to record a live session about the culinary significance of collards in the South and the origins of collards. Mira Mitchell here in the center talked about seed saving, how to save seed from collards. She works out in Pennsylvania at True Love Seeds. Down in the left here, we have John Jackson, who does work in Georgia, who is a full trial participant, who talked about his experience growing all 20 varieties. Then we had Chef Ashley Shanti do a cooking demonstration where she demonstrated how to do a creative collard salad. And again, we had Ira Wallace talk about how the project started and the importance of growing collards. So all these videos are available on the Culinary Breeding Network's YouTube channel for you to watch if you are so inclined and interested in learning more about collards. So in doing this work, we got attention again nationally. This is a picture of our friend Melanie Edwards out in the Pacific Northwest, who is another full trial site. And this is an article about her, talking about her experience growing these collards and which varieties she enjoyed growing. So now I would like to share a seed story of one of the collards in our collection. So every seed has a story, believe it or not. And I think collards particularly have some rich and interesting histories associated with them. So Miss Annie Pearl, Councilman Collard. So this is a picture of the collard here on the right, and Tom Lambert and his friend Joe Stringer here on the left. So Tom Lambert, the guy in the hat, is the donor of Miss Annie Pearl Councilman, kind of a mouthful of a name, Collard, but that's what he wanted us to call it when he donated it to us in 2015. So in 2012, he met Miss Annie Pearl, and she shared some of this collard with him, and she was 94 at the time. And she recalled that when she was living with her husband in New Prospect, a community in Clark County, Alabama, their Baptist church got a new preacher whose name was Brother Tyson. And Brother Tyson's wife came to visit Miss Annie and shared the seeds of this variety with her. And Joe, Tom, and Miss Annie speculated that this happened in the early 1950s, and that she had been stewarding this collard for over 60 years. So Miss Annie grew this for a very long time and tended it with love and care. And she also enjoyed cooking and sewing and crocheting and tending her flowers. And she passed away, unfortunately, in 2017. But Tom continued to steward this special variety. And Tom learned to love collards early on in his life. And he learned to cook collards from a family friend named Joe Savage, who was an African-American man that his family fondly named the Collard King. And he has this tried and true collard recipe that he shared with us. And I shared it with Nikki. And do you have that? And she's going to share it with you.
I just popped it into the chat.
So it's sort of a classic Southern collard recipe. But if any of you have any collards on hand and want to give this a shot, I haven't tried it myself, but I'm growing a lot of collards in my garden this fall. So hopefully I'll get to try this recipe on my own. So now that I've been talking for a long time, I wanted to take a little break and have more of a group discussion about why would we save seeds? Why is that something that we feel is an important thing to do? And I think that there are so many reasons to save seeds, and I could list some for you, but I'm curious to hear from you why maybe you feel inspired to save seeds. And I think that the act of saving seeds, my coworker Susanna said this, it's simultaneously like a radical thing and also a mundane thing. You're out there weeding your plants in the dirt, in the rain, but that the act of saving seeds is really taking a stance for something bigger. So I wanted to leave you with a quote from my coworker Susanna to get some brainstorming juices flowing. And then I'll give you a couple minutes to just sort of reflect personally about why you might save seeds. And then I'll share kind of why I save seeds. And then if you want to come off mute and share why you save seeds or pop something in the chat, we can just have a little bit of discussion about that. So I'm going to read you this little quote here. When we save seeds, we lay claim to the idea that a person has a right to make and empowered decisions about what nourishes them and what they choose to pass on to the next generation. We claim our cultural heritage and foodways through the making of garden beds, harvesting of seeds, the act of cooking recipes that reminds us of our past, present, and future. We claim our memories, our ancestors' memories, both the ones that existed and the ones that were lost. when we save seeds, we remember that the seeds are our dear friends, our kin. So that's kind of a long quote, but I'll just let you marinate on that. And we'll just take a couple minutes to reflect. And I'll bring you back in like 3 minutes here. So just take a moment. I'm going to give you just another minute to consider. I think this can be a personal reflection. So if you don't feel like sharing, that's okay too. Well, I'll start us off, and it looks like there's some folks have contributed some ideas in the chat, which is awesome. So why do I save seeds? Well, I came to Seed Savers with like a plant science background. I had just come out of school thinking about climate change and crop diversity. And I was really excited to save seeds because of genetic diversity. And I was just excited to work with a big collection and see the full range of crop diversity, you know. In my first job at Seed Savers, we would evaluate the varieties in the collection, and we would grow 40 different kinds of tomatoes in a year. And it was just really cool to see all the different ways a tomato could grow. And that diversity was just really fascinating to me. And I could just see the importance of preserving that diversity from a crop resilience standpoint. But as I've stayed at Seed Savers longer, what I've really come to appreciate is really this human dimension, really this plant-human relationship. And really just celebrating this relationship between people and plants. So now when I save seeds, I really see it as honoring and paying tribute to the generations of seed savers that came before me. So I've really kind of observed this shift from this crop diversity kind of science background to really this human dimension and human connection to seed saving. So is anyone brave enough to come off the chat or come off mute and share why they save seeds? It's okay if you don't want to, but I'm just creating space for that now.
Oh, thank you so much for creating that space. I'll go if nobody goes, but I'm gonna wait 10 seconds and see if anybody else. And then we can maybe read some of the text, the things.
Great. That sounds great, Nikki. And I also recognize that we're all in different places in our seed saving journey. So maybe this is the first time you've even considered this question, and that's okay too.
I just wanted to say that well, I'm in my 60s now, but I've been saving seeds since my 20s, but haven't made good use of all the seeds or focused on, you know, the story of all of the seeds, or picking the ones that haven't been changed. But this week I do a little green team at my school, and we actually collected some seeds from native plants. Been doing plants for the monarch butterfly. And so the students are really having a good time connecting with nature. And the seed collection, you know, was just one little thing that we could do in a very short time, like about 20 minutes for fourth grades and 20 minutes for fifth grade students who signed up for the club. So yeah, it's really neat to be saving seeds. Thank you.
Wow, thanks, Pamela. That's great that you have a club. I run a club too, although I haven't been there for a while. For the last 2 weeks we skipped out. Maybe I should read. Anybody else? Should we go ahead and read some of the things put in the chat? So
sure. Do you want to read them, Nikki?
Okay, I can go ahead.
Or I can, it doesn't matter.
I'll read them and then I'll go ahead and share what I wrote for sharing for why I save seeds. So Anne says, and forgive me if I missed people. Let me see. Okay. There are other questions, but I'll save those. Anne says, I would save seeds to ward off Armageddon. And Andrea says, I have saved seeds and see the value in it. I'm not sure how to store seeds. Susanna says, sustainability and also passing down and preserving some piece of history. Thomas says, save money as well as quality control. For sure. A gardener once told me, Nina says, if you have a vegetable that grows very well in your particular garden, save that seed because the plant has adapted to your particular environment and will grow well again next year.
For sure. Regional adaptability is a huge one. That's great.
I have saved garlic from year to year. I love the stories, Leslie says, that come with seed saving and sharing the history with children as they save seeds. Me too. Becky says, we have saved seeds to experiment and see if we can grow them again. Mary says, even though I have saved few seeds, I know it's important as the essence of life, especially as Monsanto is trying to control all of life by controlling the seeds, the source of life. And Sue says to save money and preserve that perhaps I will not be able to buy, something that I will not be able to buy. Yes. Very good reasons. Oh my God.
Those are all great reasons. See, that's way better than me just telling that to list it off the list. So I really appreciate you guys for putting all those things in the chat and for sharing. Yeah, I think the act of saving seeds is a really personal thing. And if you don't know why you save seeds, I would just keep asking yourself that question. And
yeah, and then
just keep searching for your why.
Yeah, I'll share the reason that I save seeds is because of a story I heard from somebody at Seed Savers as well. that in America, even at the turn of the 19th century, it was not uncommon for a mother to take her daughter aside on the eve of her wedding and privately gift her with a box, not of jewels, but of the family seeds. And with that, the accompanying words, now you can live off on your own. Wherever you go, you can feed your family and yourself. And perhaps unsaid, wherever you go, you have a part of me with you. And that's why I save seeds. That's one of the reasons I save seeds.
That's beautiful, Nikki. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Anyone else want to jump in with any other reasons why they save seeds? No? Okay. Well, I just have a couple more slides here, and then I'll turn it over to any questions you may have about Seed Savers Exchange or the Heirloom Collard Project. I'm happy to try and answer anything that I can. So as I'm from Seed Savers Exchange, I have to give just a little bit of seed saving information. Oops. About saving seed from collards. So I will say that if you're new to seed saving, collards are not necessarily a gateway seed saving crop. I wouldn't recommend saving collard seeds for the first time. If you're new to seed saving, I'd start with maybe something like a pea or a tomato. But I just want to give you some of this information. So you have it. So collards are in the family Brassicaceae, also known as brassicas. And they're the species Brassica oleracea. And what's interesting about this species is that it's actually a really diverse species. There are a lot of different common vegetable crops that are all the same species. They've just been diversified and selected to have certain vegetative traits. So collards are the same species as cabbage, as Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, broccoli, cauliflower. And what that means is when all those plants are in their flowering stage, they can actually cross-pollinate with each other, which is important to remember when you're trying to save seed. So collards, being a little complex to save seed from, is partly due to their life cycle. So they're what we call a biennial, which is different than an annual. An annual crop is something that produces seed in 1 year, like a pea or a tomato that I mentioned. But a biennial actually takes 2 growing seasons in northern climates to produce seed. And in southern climates, they grow in the winter months and produce seed the following spring. And this biennial nature is due to this phenomenon called vernalization. So kind of a big word, but that is basically this requirement that the plant needs to undergo before it produces flowers and seed. So vernalization is a period of cold that the plants must undergo to stimulate flower growth and seed production. And that's defined, the textbook definition is the plants have to be below 50 degrees for 10 to 12 weeks. So obviously there's going to be some variation between varieties that need different amounts of that vernalization, but that's kind of the textbook definition. So when those plants do flower, they have what we call perfect flowers, which means that the flowers have pollen producing and pollen receiving parts all inside the same flower. But they are in fact self-incompatible, which means that that pollen can actually fertilize that flower, even though they have all the parts there inside that same flower. And that's to prevent genetic bottlenecking and is a sign of an outcrossing crop. So you need more than one plant to produce a viable seed of outcrossing crops like collards. So collards are insect pollinated, meaning that insects carry the pollen from plant to plant and pollinate the flowers. And due to this insect pollination, they need kind of a large isolation distance because insects can travel. And there's a range on here, 1/2 to 1 mile, because in any given landscape, there could be certain barriers that would block that insect movement. So there could be a forest, or you could be in an urban setting and there's a lot of buildings that would discourage those insects from traveling and carrying that pollen. So like I said, collards are our outcrossing crops. So you need, we would say at least 5 plants to produce viable seed. So the population size I have on here is a huge range for 5 to 200 plants. And that wide range is basically due to the goals of why you're saving seed. If you just want to produce viable seed, you really only need 5 plants. But here at Seed Savers Exchange, we are doing a lot of genetic preservation, and we're preserving the genetics, the genetic diversity of the varieties in our collection. So we grow a larger population in order to preserve those genetics. And the collards that we have in our collection are really interesting and unique because they have a lot of genetic variation inherently in them. There's a lot of variation. The varieties aren't super uniform. And this is just due to how they were stewarded over the years by the seed stewards in the Southeast and around the country. And it's just kind of the nature of the variety. So here at Seed Savers and our outside partners, we require a larger population to kind of capture and protect those genetics. So I sent Nikki a little guide, seed saving guide that we developed that we can share with you that kind of summarizes this information. I know this is really fast just going through this information tonight, but we can send you off with this little seed saving guide if you want to try and save your own collard seeds in the future. So
Nora, the guide is the PDF, right?
the PDF, yep.
Okay, so I'll have to
We
post
can send it in an email, maybe.
send that in an email. Yes, I have
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I will say that I'm familiar with growing collards for seed here in the Midwest, and that's going to be different than other parts of the country. I recognize that all of you are in different places with your own unique climates, your own unique pests and diseases and growing conditions. So things will be different in your local area than they are here for us in Northeast Iowa. So we can just be kind of a starting place. But we also encourage you to reach out to your local extension agent or master gardening groups that might have more specific information about growing collards and saving seeds for your specific area, and might be able to give you some more detailed information. So
I'm gonna post the links that you sent me with the question, but I feel like
I'm not looking at the questions.
Do you want us to read the questions out for you then?
I can just go through this slide and then we can just talk about any questions that came up.
Okay, I'll go ahead and post all the links that you sent me then.
Okay. So ways to get involved with the Heirloom Collard Project. I would say the first way is to grow some collards. If you've never grown collards before, they're a pretty easy crop to grow. And you can access a lot of unique varieties from a couple different places. So the first place that I would direct you to is the exchange that I talked about at the beginning of this program, which is the Seed Savers facilitated gardener to gardener seed swap. I think Nikki has a link to our online catalog. But basically, you can request seed directly from the Seed Savers collection. So all those varieties that were in the trial are available through the exchange. But there's also varieties on the exchange, collard varieties from other seed savers around the country that are stewarding collards as well. So it's just a really awesome resource to find unique, heirloom, historic, rare varieties that aren't widely available from different seed companies. We also produce I wish I had a copy, a print yearbook that's basically a list of all the varieties that are available from Seed Savers Exchange from our collection, and the people and other seed stewards that are participating in this seed swap. So that's a really wonderful way to try new special varieties. Seed Savers Exchange also sells some collard varieties on our website and in our seed catalog. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange that Ira runs also sells some really great collard varieties through their seed company. So those are kind of the top 3 places I would recommend looking for seeds. You can also join our social media pages. We have the Heirloom Collard Project has a Facebook page and an Instagram page that we post updates about the project. You can share your own experiences growing collards and ask questions, and people in the community or the project organizers can answer any questions that you have. So that's another way to engage. You can binge watch all of the Collard Week videos that we produced last year that are on the Culinary Breeding Network YouTube page. They're also on our website. So our next one here, we have a website, heirloomcollards.org, that has a list of all the collards in our collection here at Seed Savers with pictures. And there's lots of articles and recipes and pictures about heirloom collards. And the last thing on here, if you are just super gung-ho about heirloom collards and you have some seed saving experience under your belt, we are actively looking for new collard seed stewards to help us steward and regenerate the collards in our collection off-site. So if you're interested in really engaging with this project, you can contact me. I can give Nikki she has my email, and you can reach out to me next year and we can talk about that program. So those are just a couple ways that you can engage with this work. So I hope you all have learned something or enjoyed learning about the Heirloom Collard Project and seed saving. And I would be happy to answer any questions to the best of my abilities, anything about Seed Savers Exchange or the Collard Project, or any questions you may have. And I really appreciate you sticking with me. I know it's like 9 o'clock on the East Coast, so I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to learn about this project that I enjoy talking about so much. So thank you all.
Thank you for being with us, Nora. And okay, so I'm gonna start from the top, or at least what I see is the top, and Dave double check me that I'm getting all the questions. Anne asks, I don't really know how to save seeds. Do you freeze them? Do you use envelopes? How do you label them? Where do we start to learn about that?
Yeah, so I can tell you what we do at Seed Savers Exchange. So we have a whole process after we've harvested seed out in the field. It's really important to let the seed fully dry down before it's stored for long or short-term storage. If there's any water inside the seed and you freeze the seed or put it in storage, that can actually damage the inside of the seed, and it may no longer be viable. So it's really important to dry your seed down before you store it long term. So for some varieties, we dry the seed on the plants. For some for some crop types, we thresh the seed and let it dry longer in our storage rooms. Actually, at Seed Savers Exchange, we do seed moisture content testing. We actually dry and weigh the seed and calculate the percent moisture before we put it in our freezer. And you don't necessarily have to do all of that work because we have somebody whose job it is to do that work. But yeah, it's just important to make sure that your seed is really dry. And we store our seed in our seed bank in foil packets that we seal shut with a heat sealer. But you could store your seeds in like a Tupperware container in your refrigerator too. You don't need fancy foil packets, or in a glass jar would be fine too. So the main thing I would say for at-home seed saving is make sure your seed is dry and make sure it's stored in a cool, dark, airtight container. So that's the short answer. I could do a whole webinar on just seed storage.
And you guys have, so if you go to Seed Savers Exchange, they have a host of webinars on their YouTube channel as well. And one thing I learned from them is normally the thing that they say is, how do you know that it's dry enough, is if it's brittle and I can crack the seed like that and it's not bendy. That's how I know that it's dry enough. And of course that varies from seed to seed. Expiration varies from seed to seed. There is, I do have like an expiration, chart of how many, you can Google those too, how many years each seed is viable for, etc. But I'll go to the next one. Says, and I don't know if this is a question, but I'm going to say it anyway. I have heard that the vault in Norway is starting to melt due to climate change.
Okay.
You have a vault in Norway. Tell us about this vault.
There's this global Svalbard seed vault in Norway. And a couple years ago, there's this big hullabaloo that it was flooding and it was melting, but they assured us that that was factored into how they designed the vault, and that the seed was actually not in danger. So I don't think at this point that is an actual concern that folks up there have. Well, so.
And
who knows what will happen in 100 years?
Yes, I forgot to mention.
At this point, I think it was just I think it just scared people, but they had actually planned for some of that flooding and melting to happen. So it wasn't an issue for them up there. So we also back up our seed at the USDA in Fort Collins. We send out backup packets to them as well. So we have two backup locations that we send seeds to.
Wow, thanks for answering that question. And might I point out Nora's fancy earrings?
I
are
have collared earrings.
yes, at this point another just because it's so such a novelty. So any pressure cooker or instant pot collard recipes, and is your favorite? I saw somebody ask, what's your favorite collard recipe? What
Ooh,
recipe do you use?
that's hard. Any pressure cooker? So I'm terrified of pressure cookers because my uncle is a emergency room doctor, and he's told me horror stories about pressure cookers. So I just steer clear of them. And I'm not an Instapot, but I'm sure if you Googled Instapot collard recipes, you would find so many things. But I have personally not tried any of them. I will say my favorite collard recipe right now is I got this excellent book written by Toni Tippin Martin, is I think her name. That's called Jubilee, and it's celebrating African American cooking for the past 200 years. And it's this fantastic book. And she's just done a ton of research on traditional recipes, and she'll have like an old recipe and then her kind of modern take on it. And it's just this really beautiful, fascinating book. But she has this great recipe for these collard dumplings, these cornmeal dumplings. So you stew the collards, you make this whole broth and you stew the collards, and then you use some of that broth to make these cornmeal dumplings. And then the finished dish is the stewed collards and these cornmeal dumplings that are made with the collards broth, and it's just delicious.
Oh, could you put it in the chat, please? Two people are.
Yeah, let me just make sure I'm saying her name right. I want to get it right.
That sounds really good.
Yeah, I was right. Here we go. And the name of the book is Jubilee. So highly recommend that.
Yeah. And Andrea says she's eaten collard greens used as wraps. And Debbie asked if you could, what is the best way to get seeds dry when you live in a hot but humid climate?
Yeah, so it's pretty hot and humid here in Northeast Iowa, and we use a lot of fans. I think fans, if you're a seed saver, fans are your new best friend.
Yes, I've seen that done by farmers too, like when they dry their garlic. Somebody was asking that. Garlic. We dry our garlic just by hanging them braided on the wall, but it doesn't last as long as we'd like. So it becomes it's humid here, so it does get moldy. And so I saw these farmers in Montana, and they had fans inside inside like where their tools were in their tool shed, and a lot of garlic in there. Collard kraut. Thank you, Jonathan. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to, it is 9:08. I'm so grateful that you're all with us, and so grateful to you, Norah, for sending us the seeds that you guys will be receiving if you put in your email, your mailing address. And because some of them are really thick, we might be breaking them up, and because it won't fit in the 1 ounce packet. So I might be putting them in smaller, but they're all from Seed Savers Exchange. And I'm gonna end. If do you have any last words, everybody? I saw a few thank yous. Thank you from Sue for all the collard information. If anybody wants to just thank our guest tonight, Norah, and I will end with a video from Seed Savers Exchange.
I'm just gonna put my collard email in the chat.
Merci beaucoup, Norah.
If you have any more collard questions, I'm happy to do my best to answer them. So
perfect. Well, this is so fascinating again, and so inspiring for me. I love anything that has to do with seed saving, and I hope you guys. This is more of an advanced technique because when you first start gardening, you don't think I'm gonna save the seeds at once, but you may think about it the next year and the next year. And this is just valuable to know that this is an option for all of us to do. It's a very empowering option. So I'm gonna end with your. Oops, let me do that again because I didn't share my sound. Thank you, Norah. Nikki Collards are my very favorite greens, Leslie said, and I was excited to learn of this. Wonderful. Wonderful. Here we go.
Seeds have such potential. I looked at my grandfather's seeds in my hand. That was 1975, and I saw more than next year's garden. I thought, this is my family's history. This is important. We reached out to other gardeners, asked them, are you saving seeds? Would you like to swap seeds with us? And that's really how it all got started. People saving seeds from their gardens and sharing them with each other. Boxes of seeds started coming in the mail. Hundreds of varieties of beans, flowers, everything. People wanted to know that their heritage would be cared for as well as their seeds.
For 40 years, Seed Savers Exchange has been a safe place for seeds. We protect over 20,000 varieties in our collection at Heritage Farm, growing them out regularly to keep them healthy. We can't maintain these seeds alone. We depend on a whole network of gardeners, seed savers from every generation. Anyone can grow and save seeds, whether in your backyard or a community garden. And the more people who grow, save, and share seeds, the more people who participate, the better we can all protect biodiversity. Seed has the power to create a healthy food system, one that's as diverse as the world we live in. Seeds are important to everyone. If you eat food, you rely on seeds. And seeds rely on you and me. It's up to us to maintain them.
Saving and sharing seeds. Protecting them for the future. That's what we do.
And with that, in respect of everyone's time, I think Sue's giving people, you've got Collards Stewards coming your way. Oops. I think my sound is now.
Seed saving starts small. That's how.
So thank you, everybody. I won't be able to read all the comments that are coming in, Norah, but I hope you have been. So
Yes, thank you everyone so much for participating.
and thank you for being with us tonight, Norah. I will see you all on our next webinar. We have these things rolling out more frequently now. So we will be back again. Just check out our website at growmyownfood.com for the latest webinar. And for those of you who are GIY members, more on this soon enough. You guys, there was something I was thinking, your seeds, your garlic, your heirloom seeds that you've redeemed are coming in the mail for you as well, as prizes for your work. So thank you so much and have a good night, everyone.